So the moderator of the panel will be Roy Fox, another of the organizers. By the way, I forgot to mention that Louina was also an organizer of this workshop. And well, now you have also the opportunity to ask questions whenever Roy will ask you to ask questions. And otherwise, I'll let you to the moderator.
Good. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for surviving so long and really in the week. The final and exciting panel for the poster session. Distinguished panelists are English people, today, please, a few minutes to introduce yourself, and then maybe say a few words about what excites you about Hierarchical research, what you think about interesting work in innovations.
Yes, I have always been fascinated by building hierarchical reinforcement lines since 1990 basically, and trying to really solve all these problems that are associated with it. So you learn a new skill, and it somehow has to reuse these previous skills, and then you want to have a general purpose computer which can implement arbitrary hierarchies or other types of interactions between different policies, and then you would want to have a system that understands what is the present task. It's different from the other task next door and so on. So you have extra inputs that tell the system what is the task, and then you want to profit from the sharing of algorithmic information between different solutions and different skills to different tasks in a way that allows you to more easily and more quickly solve new tasks on top of what you have. And so we want to have a method that compresses all your previous skills into one network such that it learns to exploit these relations to other tasks. And although we have started in 1990 with that stuff, we needed a lot of additional computational power. Every 5 years we are getting a factor of 10, and now this is all becoming much more feasible in much more interesting domains with real vision and real robots, and I'm happy about that.
From DeepMind. I've also been interested in hierarchy for a long time. I got interested in it from the point of view of psychology and neuroscience. It's been acknowledged in those fields for decades that hierarchy is a hallmark of intelligent behavior in humans and animals. It's also clearly something that allows us to deal with complex environments, long time scales, despite our pretty striking cognitive limitations. And as I studied it, the thing that I find most interesting is the representation learning problem. As Louina mentioned in her talk, anybody who works on HRL quickly realizes that the hard part is learning the hierarchy. And one side of that I find particularly fascinating, both as a psychologist and neuroscientist, but also as an AI researcher, is that the right decomposition for HRL depends very much on the structure of behavior. So there are questions that we have to understand, like the structure of the tasks that we're interested in. not just look at algorithmic solutions without considering that other side. And that's an aspect of AI research and also of neuroscience that I really find fascinating.
Hi, Serena Africa from McGill and DeepMind. So I've been working on this for 20 years, and I'm very hopeful, I have to say. Part of it, as Jürgen mentioned, is we just have bigger computers and we have very nice tasks that where actually hierarchy is necessary. I think for a long time, we're working on small problems, and we can solve small problems, single problems in many different ways, and hierarchy doesn't really matter. But now that we're scaling up to real problems, you can start seeing these advantages. It's been really fun seeing in the last 3 years or so the emergence of many people thinking in this space. I think there's been lots of interesting work at this workshop, also at the main conference on hierarchy. I think we have a good approach for doing the optimizations now. I think that we've punted a little bit on this question of where does the representation come from, right? So in our case, for example, just assume that we have the reward. I think that is still an open question. And then this issue of exploration is also an open question. And it's quite important because the data that the agencies drives the creation of the hierarchy. So I think it's useful for all of us to be thinking in this space.
Teachers from both TU Darmstadt and Max Planck Intelligent Systems. Basically, for me, hierarchy is really more of a total necessity because in the domain I'm interested in, really real-world domain of robotics, we in the end always have microdata, which basically says you can't explore all the possibility, but that's massively parameters all the possibility, or massively trying all the possibilities. So you're already by the amount of data you can generate by the dimensionality of the problem. There's no other way but hierarchy.
Hi, my name is Marcus Campos. I'm the head of AI for Bullseye. It's a company that is actually focused on productizing hierarchical reinforcement learning to solve industrial applications. So, hierarchical reinforcement learning to be defined is actually what day in, day out. Otherwise, it may not solve the massive problem we're trying to solve, which includes robotics, also station control, all kinds of machines, things like that. Many interactions actually very happy to be here because I heard so many pieces of work that are very close to the challenge that we have. I'm trying to address it in a few ways. So I'm going along with lots of interesting ideas to follow up. And, Adam, sorry. Good. Okay. And so these things we look forward to, like, we talk about termination conditions, we like to switch options and termination, select options in different scenarios. How the composition, how to find the structure. Because we work with scenarios that actually people can provide structure, can provide prior knowledge, but even in those cases, we find there are situations that is very complex, so it will almost only reverse. That requires creative usability, also something that we find to be very important. We use that in some cases, let's say you have a collection, that's another area that's very useful to us, you have a collection of blocks, and we like to orchestrate them, but also find complements, right, for what cannot be solved in that particular set of blocks. It's great if you can, if not optimal solution, but they are fast because people look at selective, or one of sometimes it's not enough. So there's many areas of improvement, and I'm very excited about all the investment I've seen in the past few years in here.
Hi there, I'm David Silver from DeepMind. I'm interested in building general purpose reinforcement learning agents that can solve a wide variety of challenging problems. I think if we really care about challenging problems, we have to care about hierarchy, because ultimately problems should last for more than hundreds of thousands of steps, potentially millions of steps. We want to build agents that can have simulations in virtual lives. So I have an agent that lives in a virtual environment and we want it to take steps and not have this repeating episode structure, something which really has a long experience. And I think the way to achieve that is really to have a constructivist approach. So I think we need a constructivist approach which actually breaks down the problem instead of just looking for this very long-term optimization of the final reward. We need a constructivist approach which at every stage is starting to create building blocks of knowledge and put those building blocks of knowledge together to gain us something. So we start off having small blocks, and those blocks get put together to give us bigger and bigger blocks, until eventually the agent is able to solve the redirection problem.
Thank you. So the way this works is I'll ask a few questions, but really this is an opportunity for you guys to ask any question you have. So I'm going to start, but please line up for any questions you want to discuss this. So I'm going to start with Jürgen. So listening to your talks, one often gets feeling that a lot of these things have been already solved. There may not be anything left to solve. And I was wondering if you can maybe point out things that are really not solved, really we still need to think about it, beyond more computation, more data applications.
So I think several sub-aspects of the whole thing can be solved to a certain extent. So we understand basic principles of intrinsic motivation. What is the next goal that you want to select if you have a system that selects its own next goals? We have a pretty good idea what the strategy there. Maybe the easiest thing that you can add to the repertoire, be predicting a 10 pixel, something like that, as the power of the more and more general economies over grows. Finds it harder and harder to add something that it cannot solve just by generalization. But there are a couple of things that, in my point of view, still have to fall in place. How do you combine this power play approach, where you have self-invented tasks or general counsel that in our case usually are recurring on network or just purpose of people? How do you combine that in a good way with this meta-learning approach, like where you try to look back at your entire life and have this trial, this approach which looks at all your trials not as the basic building blocks of your learning procedure, but instead you have something that spans many trials, which are these learning algorithms that are working over several fronts, and where you really do credit assignment across these trials, because of early learning algorithm that you had to achieve something, set the stage for later a learning algorithm, which then many trials later had an impact on yet additional future learning algorithms. So do all this credit assignment right in a way that is not as limited as what I mentioned today in the talk with the success story algorithm, which is mostly just measuring reward per time, but which does that in an optimal way. And and what exactly does optimal here mean? And I think once we have brought these two puzzle pieces together, my personal opinion, then we are done. At the moment, we don't have that, but I think then we are done.
Okay, thank you. I forgot to say that I'm going to target my questions at someone. I suggest you do the same, but of course then it's open to anyone. So anyone like to answer the same question.
So something that I've been kind of craving ever since I was a grad student is an understanding of hierarchy where which accommodates shared structure. So spreading peanut butter on a piece of bread is a lot like spreading jam, not exactly the same. So maybe you want to use the same option for that, but then there are all sorts of different things that are like that, like painting and waxing a floor, or putting mustard on a hot dog. I mean, where's the boundary line between the things that should rely on the same option versus things that require a new option? I don't think the brain makes that decision. I think things are parameterizable, and there's a similarity space among subroutines that is dealt with quite naturally. Another thing that Doina and I were talking about earlier today is skill combination. So I was telling her a story about when my son was a baby and I found myself tiptoeing down the stairs because I had to get downstairs, that was one goal, but I also didn't want to wake him up, that was another goal. And I sort of, without reflecting on it, just put those skills together, even though I don't think I'd ever tiptoe down the stairs. So this kind of flexibility of combination and accommodation of similarity structure, I think, is something that I think the resurgence of interest in deep learning gives us an opportunity to think about that for action.
Yes, so my question is for David Silver. So we've heard a lot today about how we have a pretty good handle on optimizing with a hierarchy, but generating the hierarchy itself seems to be something that we're still struggling with. On the other hand, if we look at AlphaZero, it's being applied to domains where intuitively it seems like there certainly is an awful lot of hierarchical structure. I would expect that Go or chess probably has a lot more hierarchical structure to it, bottlenecks and so forth, than say Pac-Man or even Montezuma's Revenge. But there's nothing in the algorithm that explicitly, at the beginning at least, explicitly embeds that structure of the domain. It seems to somehow emerge in the policy value network. And maybe also the labels during Monte Carlo tree search. So it seems like somehow the structure is emerging in that algorithm. Do you believe that's the case? And if so, how broadly could we apply that technique to other domains?
Thanks for the question. I think we really need to differentiate two uses of the word hierarchy. So I think one use of the word hierarchy is building up some kind of abstraction of your inputs to really try and understand what's happening. For example, in the game of Go or a game of chess, that might be understanding that in a certain position you've got a particular group that's alive or dead, or a certain king safety feature might emerge from this. And I think this can often be structured hierarchically, and there are maybe concepts or abstractions that come out of this. I think what people mostly been talking about, I think, today is about temporal abstraction, which is over the horizon of the problem. And I think actually both chess and Go are examples of problems which actually have very short time horizons. So a game of chess typically lasts maybe 100 or 200 moves. Go perhaps up to maybe 300 moves. So I think perhaps the answer is that we're in a regime where we can get away with it. I think that if we were to play a game of similar complexity to Go, but where it lasted 300,000 moves, I think that there may be a much larger role for hierarchy in the form of temporal abstraction to really matter. So I think this is one of the properties that we were maybe able to exploit in these games, that actually we were able to search at a granularity where the actions were really meaningful, and where the look ahead is able to really capture within the horizon of the search something which is really important at that time scale. Whereas if you needed to make decisions at the level of a robot, which is taking millisecond level actions over the voltages in its motor, but it still has to decide how to get out of this building, then it's probably not going to be useful to build a search tree at that millisecond level, because the decisions which are actually meaningful in terms of the decision points that actually matter to it will occur at some abstraction. So I think it might be just a difference in time scale in these horizons of these problems. And I guess that's my feeling. I believe it will end up being more important in these other problems, but I think we also have to be slightly cautious, because the history so far of what we've seen in deep reinforcement learning has often been that the more direct gradient-based approaches do surprisingly well. And so I really hope and believe that these hierarchical approaches based on temporal abstraction will be significant, but I think we also have to at least entertain the idea that there may be more direct approaches.
Thank you.
So if I may, a follow-up question. I sometimes hear the criticism that hierarchy temporal abstraction is just one more trick, one more architecture trick, like convolutional networks for spatial abstraction. What's your opinion on this? Is there something more? It's just a way of making neural networks.
So there's more to it in the sense that there's different benefits of temporal abstraction. I think right now a lot of the focus is on the behavior and the hierarchical behavior, but there's the hierarchical modeling of the world, and that to me is quite different in the sense that we would like models that take big steps over time. in order to be able to do efficient planning. So David's pointed out that perhaps in these games, the search trees are not that deep, and so you don't need that. But if you really wanted to solve problems that have many, many steps, then the models are important, and the model at least doesn't feel at the moment like it's just a choice of sort of network hierarchy. There's something deeper than that to be had there. I think right now not many of us are focusing on that because also, this is frustration at least that I have. Perhaps other people have to with model-based reinforcement learning. We like model-based reinforcement learning to work. It doesn't seem to work as well as we hoped for. I think we're still trying to find better ways of doing this.
In some cases, the hierarchy is already part of the problem. Right? If your lower levels are continuous and higher levels are discrete, you have hierarchy. It's part of the problem of that.
I also just wanted to add that if we think about the extreme case, I think it makes it clear that it becomes necessary. The extreme case is where you move to continuous time. And when you move to continuous time, you have to pick a time scale which you reason. And so if you are picking that time scale, and you have that freedom over that time scale, it becomes apparent that this is a necessary choice that we need to make as an algorithm agent designers.
Hierarchy is one of a million types of algorithmic regularities that you can have within tasks or among tasks and so on. And there are so many others that you want to represent in your general purpose learning system. Analogy, the planets are similar to the way how the electrons circle the nucleus and stuff like that. And all kinds of other relations between different solutions to different tasks. That's what you want to exploit. That's why I'm such a big fan of having the whole hierarchy and similar things represented in a general purpose computer search as a recurrent neural network. So I'm not a fan of having the hierarchy pre-modeled in some sort of tree which is already preordained, and then you have to squeeze all your learning into that given model. Instead, it's much more natural that you squeeze your solutions to a particular problem into this recurrent network, which is then has a chance to use other parts of other previously learned skills as subroutines and do everything that is computable, including the analogy, including the hierarchy, including all kinds of algorithmic relationships that are computable. And so I think, in principle, that's the way to go if you want to have a general purpose reinforcement learning machine that not only does hierarchy, but also exploits all the other different types of algorithmic regularities.
Second, everybody. I think that we measure conclusion of networks. I think that there's an element of architecture and intrinsic nature of the data. So the same way we exploit topological relationships, correlations in the data, and the other one would do the architecture around that. Now we have multi-scales in type that we also need techniques to exploit that. So I think on both ways.
So I would just add that, I don't know what trick means. I mean, trick is convolutions exploit something about the structure of the problem that we happen to know going in. And we know that it seems like the same thing with hierarchy. What I'd add to that, since that's sort of lit, is to come back to a distinction that Dave made earlier between state abstraction and temporal abstraction. I think those two often need to work together. So just having temporal abstraction may not help unless you also are able to think abstractly about, say, goal states. So a couple weeks ago I realized, I need to get a Christmas present for my wife. So I had a goal, but it was extremely abstractly specified. I didn't know what I was going to get, and I wasn't thinking about any other aspect of my behavior that would satisfy that. I think until we have agents that can abstract in state space at the same time that they abstract temporally, we won't have really cracked this problem.
I had a question for the distributed paper in regards to the power play paper. I was just curious, in regards to the task convention and selection, if you experimented with any measure of novelty or surprise, or alternatively a marginal utility with respect to a higher level task?
So with the power play, usually our substrate, again, is a general purpose computer, so mostly a recurrent neural network, and then it's inventing its own new goals on top of the old goals, and you squeeze them in and you make sure that there's a replay of the old tasks, such that it doesn't forget the old stuff. And then what kind of tasks are of interest? Well, you as a user, you start with a particular subset of the set of all possible computationally describable tasks, and then it's trying to find the next one that is easiest to solve based on what it has learned so far, and which is easiest to add to the repertoire without destroying the previous skills. One little nice example where the task set was limited because it was kind of dependent on what you can do with slow feature analysis. That is what Varun-Campella did in 2015 with that approach, where you had slow features for discovering regularities in input videos coming in through a humanoid robot. So we had a Leica robot, and it gets sensory data from the cameras, and then it's trying to come up with a discovery of a new sensor, of a new regularity, a new pattern in the incoming stream that it didn't know yet. And then making a skill to reproduce that, basically, and then adding that to the existing set of skills. And it was limited in the sense that it wasn't able to generate or discover arbitrary regularities, only those limited to slow features in that particular case. But that's really interesting because you find all kinds of temporal invariances in rather complex videos that you can then use to discover new ways of compressing the video, basically. So you have compression progress of a limited kind, and then it learns it plays around with its little toys and learns new skills on top of the other ones. In a general version of that, of course, you give it a set of all possible computational tasks, everything that's computable, and then as a smart way of allocating runtime to testing different combinations of tasks and problem solver modifications such that it comes up with a new modification that has the property that the new problem solver can do something that the old one couldn't do yet, the new task, but it doesn't forget the old things, and it can demonstrate that it doesn't forget the old things. So more or less sophisticated ways. So that's the basic principle, and in principle you can apply that to anything.
Okay, thanks.
Question maybe for Marcus and anyone else. So what do you see as the near-term, real-world applications that really require so they agree that this is an inductive bias that sort of relates to some real-world property? What are some things with this
The short term, basically every kind of work that we do in an industrial setting, we find separate the thing. There is one element: do you need it to solve? In some cases, you can solve this in a higher, you can solve it in a single one, right? You just take over in more computer power. And now, when you're working with people in companies and they're trying to basically level up and learn those kind of things, actually breaking down the problem, subcomponents. Right? And that's separating that from learning end-to-end, right? Because we start to actually be able to express things in very large hierarchies, and that's the goal. And if you have a large hierarchy, you try to do it end-to-end, basically you have a very small hierarchy, right? Lots of parameters become very time-consuming. So it becomes a bit, depending which side you're working with, it becomes complicated. So actually, partition the problem has been very useful in robotics work that we have been doing, HVAC work, working with energy companies. So in most of the work that we have, we found that has been very useful. Also to include prior knowledge. Not everything in a hierarchy has to be learned. Or actually, you can actually include somebody. I think they talked about a lot of things that robots know how to do, right? By themselves, the OS and the manufacturers. So we can combine those skills as components and actually select only those things which are right available to you and some things that are learned. So we found that all this combination has been very useful in all classes of problems.
So I'm going to be a little bit bold here and just point out again that